I didn't expect a parade when I pulled up to the lake house, but I didn't expect silence either. The air smelled like cold pine and old secrets. Snow crunched under my boots as I hauled my suitcase up the porch steps of Jason's family home. Half-log cabin, half-forgotten memory. The plan had been simple. Thanksgiving with his side of the family, as always. I'd prepped dishes, bought gifts, even took a few unpaid days off. But something was off the second I stepped inside. No fireplace crackling, no chatter, no scent of roasting turkey. The place was dark except for the faint blue glow of the television playing some rerun nobody was watching. That's when I saw the note. Taped to the fridge door with a cheap magnet shaped like a moose, it was scribbled in Jason's quick, careless handwriting. "Went to Aspen with Marissa. Take care of Everett. He's your responsibility now. No, call me. No, hope you understand. No warning. Just gone." I stared at it for a full minute before my brain let me breathe again. Marissa, his co-worker, the one with the fake laugh and perfect nails, the one he swore was just a friend. Aspen? What the hell? Then I heard the chair creak. A figure sat in the corner, nearly swallowed by the dim light and shadows. Jason's stepfather, Everett. I'd only met him twice. The family didn't talk about him much. Said he was cranky, hard to manage, sick. But he wasn't what I expected. He wasn't weak. "Didn't think you'd actually come," he said, his voice low and gravelly like someone who'd smoked through 4 wars and outlived 3 wives. I turned slowly. Neither did I. He didn't move, just nodded toward the paper in my hand. Let me guess. Gone to Aspen. Take care of the old man. That about right? I clenched my jaw. Pretty much. He snorted. Figures. Jason always was a selfish little bastard. I wanted to defend him, to say he wasn't always like this, but the words wouldn't come, because maybe he had always been like this, and I just hadn't wanted to see it. I dropped my bag near the doorway and walked to the kitchen in a daze. The fridge was nearly empty, a sad carton of eggs, a jar of olives, a 6-pack of beer missing 4, nothing for Thanksgiving, nothing for anyone. I brought sweet potatoes, cranberries, and pie ingredients, I said aloud, to no one in particular. Well, Everett said, pushing himself up with a grunt, at least we won't starve. He shuffled slowly into the kitchen, his gait uneven but not frail. A cane helped him balance, but there was nothing fragile about him. His eyes were clear, calculating, watching me closely. You're not mad, I said, that they left. Oh, I'm mad, he replied, just not surprised. He leaned on the counter beside me. The heat was on, barely, maybe 62, maybe colder. The place felt abandoned long before I walked in. They left me with a dying man, I muttered. They left me with a woman they underestimated, Everett countered, eyes narrowing. That's their mistake. I looked at him, really looked. He wasn't asking for help. He wasn't apologizing for being here. He was ready. Sarah, he said, his voice soft but unflinching, shall we begin? And just like that, I realized this wasn't going to be another sob story about a woman forgotten. This was a beginning, a quiet one, but it would end loud. Over the next hour, the house thawed slightly. I turned up the thermostat, unpacked my groceries, and made a pot of weak coffee. Everett filled me in on the timeline. Jason and Marissa left the night before, claiming some last-minute opportunity. Jason's mother, Carol, had gone with them. I wasn't invited. I was assigned. It didn't sit right. Why would they leave you alone up here? I asked. They didn't think I'd notice, he said, sipping coffee. They think I'm checked out. They think I'm one step from hospice. Jason likes to act like he's doing me a favor just showing up. And you're not? He smiled faintly. Let's just say, I have more left in me than they think. Everett walked to the den and returned with a thick envelope. You ever want to know the truth about someone? Check where the money's going. Inside the envelope were bank statements, account logs, pages of handwritten notes in blocky, careful penmanship, dates, missed appointments, charges for medical supplies that never arrived. I scanned the pages. I didn't want to believe it. But it was all there. This is, I hesitated, this is elder abuse. It's theft with a smile, he said. And they've been doing it for years. I thought of Jason, of his constant guilt trips, of how my design clients weren't worth the time, how he encouraged me to shut down my small studio. I remembered how he insisted on joint accounts. Our savings, he called it. But my father left me that money. Now I was standing in a cold house, staring at proof that he'd been bleeding his stepfather dry too. They've underestimated the wrong people, I said quietly. Everett met my eyes. That's what I was counting on. Ever been betrayed by the people you trusted most? Join the Secret Revenge channel, where stories like yours find power, not pity. We don't just share confessions. We help you document, expose, and dominate. Let them underestimate you. That's where we begin. The next morning, the note still sat on the kitchen counter like a punch I hadn't ducked in time. Went to Aspen with Marissa. Take care of Everett. He's your responsibility now. Even after sleeping on it, or trying to, it still felt like a slap from someone I thought loved me. Aspen, with her, on Thanksgiving, no phone call, no heads up, just gone. I sat at the table staring at my cold coffee, my stomach twisted with a sick kind of clarity. He didn't just forget me, he ditched me. Everett, already dressed and seated across from me, sipped from a chipped Denver Broncos mug and watched quietly. He left you, he said plainly. No sugar, no sympathy, just the truth. He left us, I corrected. He nodded slowly. Fair point. I didn't know what to say. I didn't even know what to feel first. Anger? Humiliation? Heartbreak? I pulled out my phone, hoping for a message. Something. Nothing. But I did have a notification. Instagram. Jason had been tagged in a photo. I opened it. It hit like a gut punch. There he was, my husband of 6 years, smiling on the balcony of a luxury ski lodge, his arm around Marissa. She wore a fuzzy white coat, one leg popped just slightly for the camera, all teeth and gloss and effortless deception. Their glasses clinked together, champagne fizzing over. Thankful for new beginnings, the caption read. I stared at it for a long time, letting the image burn into my brain. I swiped through more posts, Jason's mother sipping wine in a hot tub, Marissa and Jason at dinner, cozy, laughing, all time-stamped from the past 48 hours, days before I arrived here. So this had been planned. He'd lied about his mother wanting to host Thanksgiving, lied about how everyone was pitching in, and how Everett couldn't be left alone. It was all cover for a week-long ski getaway with his mistress. He took the time to craft that lie, pack a bag, book a suite, post to social media, but couldn't take 5 seconds to look me in the eye and tell me the truth. I tossed the phone on the counter, disgust rising in my throat. I take it he's not shy about showing off, Everett said. They're all over Instagram, I muttered. He didn't seem surprised. Figures. Carol always did love a camera. Jason got it from her. If it doesn't make it to the internet, did it even happen? I turned to him, blinking hard. Did you know about her? Everett gave a long, slow nod. Marissa? Yeah. She's been calling here for months. Real chipper voice. Smells fake from a mile away. You never said anything. Not my place, he said, but then added, but I suspected he'd pull something like this. Just didn't think he'd do it this blatantly. I leaned on the kitchen counter, suddenly lightheaded. He drained our savings last week, $5,400, said it was for prepaying some work expenses before year-end. I believed him. You had that in a joint account? I nodded. Everett shook his head. And that's how they get you. I didn't answer. I couldn't. All the red flags I'd ignored were waving right in my face now, waving and laughing. Jason used to talk me out of taking clients. He'd say I should relax more, take fewer projects, that we were building our future. He made it sound like love, like stability. But now, looking at that Instagram photo, Marissa's red nails curled around my husband's arm, I realized what he'd really been doing. He wasn't building a future with me, he was using me as a placeholder. Where is your mother in all this? I asked Everett. In the suite next door, I imagine. Same one she and I stayed in the year after we got married. Funny how she's always needed a break right when there's something inconvenient to deal with. Like your health? He shrugged. They think I'm a goner. Might not be wrong. But I'm not dead yet, and I'm sure as hell not dumb. I looked at him. Really looked. And for the first time, I didn't see a burden or an obligation. I saw a man who'd been just as betrayed as I had. They left me here to handle you, I said. They left me here to disappear, he replied. There was a long silence between us. Then he said it again, soft this time, almost like a whisper. Shall we begin? By noon, I was sitting on the floor in the guest room, sorting through dusty folders Everett kept in a locked filing cabinet. He handed me one labeled simply, Receipts. Inside, months of bank statements, copies of pharmacy logs, even photos of unopened medication. Dates were highlighted, amounts circled, handwritten notes in Everett's stiff, blocky writing. This is evidence, I murmured. No lawyer ever believed me when I said they were bleeding me dry, Everett said. They're charming, manipulative. I sound like a cranky old man. They sound like saints. They left you here to die. He didn't deny it. But they also left me you. That stopped me cold. You know, he continued, I think they wanted you out of the way too. Just figured you'd sit here quietly while they moved on. He met my eyes. But they underestimated the woman you are. I can see it. I can feel it. And if you'll help me, we'll make damn sure they regret every lie they told. And I realized in that moment, I wasn't the victim of this story. I was about to become its ending. I woke up colder than the room should have allowed. The thermostat was set to 68, but the air carried a kind of chill no heater could fix, the kind that settles into your bones when you've been made into someone's afterthought. My husband hadn't just left me behind, he'd written me off. And the worst part? He probably thought I'd stay quiet about it. Everett was already up when I came into the kitchen. He had a flannel robe over his clothes and was methodically frying eggs, moving slower than most, but not clumsily. You sleep? He asked without looking over. A little. He flipped a yolk. You looked like a woman who hadn't gotten bad enough yet. Bad enough? He finally turned. People don't walk away from comfort. They walk away when it's so bad, staying feels like self-destruction. You there yet? I didn't answer, but I was close. We sat down to eat in silence, just the two of us and the ticking clock. It felt like we were waiting for something to happen, or maybe we were deciding to make it happen. He broke the quiet. I know things they think I don't. I glanced at him. I know Jason's been skimming money from our joint account. I know Carol's been putting utilities in my name so she can write off hers. And I know they've been stashing cash from my estate into what they think are untouchable trust accounts. My fork paused mid-air. You're serious? He chuckled, dry as desert dirt. I've been in finance for 45 years, Sarah. I taught Jason how to balance a checkbook. Now he thinks he can con me? He stood slowly and walked to a cabinet above the fridge, reaching for a battered lockbox. Inside, a stack of manila folders, a small thumb drive, and something that looked like a worn ledger from a bygone era. He handed me the drive. This is where the real story lives. I plugged it into my laptop and opened the files. There were spreadsheets, screenshots of bank activity, even voice memos Everett had recorded during phone calls with doctors, financial reps, and, disturbingly, Jason. In one recording, Jason's voice was unmistakable. Just keep things quiet until after the holidays, and we'll revisit the distribution. Another memo was labeled Gaslight number 3, October. Everett had jotted notes. Jason tells me again that the insurance policy was cashed for my benefit. No deposit ever made. $12,000 missing. You probably just forgot, Dad. I didn't forget. I looked up, stunned. You've been documenting this? For over a year. I knew they'd try something, I just didn't know when. And now? He leaned back, folding his hands across his chest. Now they've handed me the perfect opportunity. I didn't speak for a long time. My brain was swimming with facts, patterns, and emotions I didn't know where to file. Anger, betrayal, shame for ever defending Jason, guilt for not noticing sooner. "You knew Jason was cheating on me," I said, not as a question. Everett didn't flinch. "I suspected. Marissa's called here after hours more times than a work friend should. Once, she answered when I called Jason's phone, thought I was Uber Eats." I stared at him, mouth open. "You didn't tell me." He shrugged. "Would you have believed me?" "Probably not." He stood and walked over to the living room, motioning me to follow. He pointed to a side table. "Pull the bottom drawer." I did. Inside were more documents, certified copies of medical reports, missed prescriptions, even thermal photos of the house showing freezing rooms due to neglected heating. "This is elder neglect," I said, anger rising. "Straight up abuse." He nodded. "And they don't even hide it well." My hands trembled as I stacked the evidence. My eyes burned, not from fatigue, but from fury. I had trusted Jason, built a life with him, let him talk me out of a career, let him control the finances. He'd smiled through it all. "Do you want revenge?" I asked. Everett looked at me hard. "I want justice." We stood in silence, the fireplace crackling low behind us. "I'll help," I said. "Whatever you need, I'm in." He smiled for the first time that day. Not a triumphant smile, just a tired one. One that said, finally. "There's more," he said. "You need to understand the full scope. I'm dying, Sarah. Terminal, pancreatic. They know it. That's why they left." My knees went weak. "They left a dying man behind," I whispered. "They were hoping I'd go quietly." He walked to the hallway closet, pulled out a duffel bag, and tossed it on the couch. Inside were medical documents, test results, a sealed envelope marked, "Will, real one." "I don't have much time," he said, sitting down slowly, "but I've got enough to make things right." He pointed at the papers. "Help me finish this, and you won't just walk away with dignity, you'll walk away with what they thought was already theirs." I picked up the envelope and met his gaze. "Then let's finish it." The will Everett handed me wasn't some flimsy printout from a legal website. It was thick, official, signed, stamped, notarized, 2 witnesses, a cover letter from a Denver law firm I'd never heard of. Taped inside the envelope was a yellow post-it with his handwriting. "They think I left it all to Jason. They're wrong." Everett sat across from me, his breathing shallow but steady. "Jason and Carol have no idea that everything they think they'll inherit isn't theirs." I opened the document. He'd named me executor of the estate, trustee of a fund, beneficiary of real property including the lake house, 2 other properties in Vermont and Arizona, and multiple bank accounts. Not the visible ones Jason had access to, but the ones quietly tucked under Everett's private LLC. "Why me?" I asked, stunned. "Why not a lawyer, or someone from your family?" He gave a tired smile. "Because you've seen what they are now. You know what they're capable of, and because you still showed up, even when they abandoned me." It wasn't flattery, it was observation, cold, precise, and real. Everett leaned forward, his expression tightening. "I'm not asking you to love me, Sarah. I'm asking you to help me make sure people like them don't get away with this." I nodded. "What do you need?" "3 things," he said, raising his fingers slowly. "First, catalog everything. Finances, photos, records. We need an airtight file trail." He paused, breathing a little heavier. "Second, I want a video statement. In my words, while I'm still lucid, they'll try to say I wasn't thinking straight. We make that impossible." "And the third?" His smile turned faintly dangerous. "We're going to make them watch it all fall apart." That afternoon, I started digitizing his files. My graphic design background finally served a purpose I hadn't imagined. Tagging and timestamping evidence, creating timelines, even designing mock medical charts to match his symptoms. Everett showed me how to make it look real, even when it wasn't. "Stagecraft," he called it. "Not fraud, just emphasis." In between work sessions, he rested in the living room, wrapped in a wool blanket with a notebook always within reach. When he dozed, I flipped through the pages. His sharp notes on phone calls, prescription refills, even small lies Jason had told over the years. There were entries like, "Jason told doctor I had late-stage dementia. I don't. Saw notes flagged for memory decline. Insurance denied MRI. Carol skipped my appointment for yoga. Found her credit card charge at the casino instead." It was all there. Abuse disguised as caretaking, theft wrapped in concern. By sunset, the plan had a backbone. We would record Everett's testimony. We would document the neglect. We would create the visual story of his decline. And when Jason returned, thinking he'd slide into a peaceful goodbye and a fat inheritance, we'd greet him with a funeral, a locked trust, and a letter he'd never forget. Later that evening, Gloria arrived. She was Everett's attorney, early 60s, sharp jawline, wore boots with her blazer, and had a voice like steel under silk. "Sarah," she said, shaking my hand, "he says you're in. That true?" "It is." "Good. I'll need your help on the trust logistics. There's a paper trail we need to fortify before the others come sniffing around." She sat beside Everett and opened a thick folder. "I've got the revised will, trust documents, and POA forms ready. When we file hard. Any challenge they make will be laughed out of court." Everett nodded to me. "This is the part where we take the power back." I signed where Gloria pointed, notarizing my role as executor and trustee. It felt surreal. A few days ago, I was planning mashed potatoes and thinking about new holiday place settings. Now I was executing a plan that would upend an entire family's future. Gloria stayed late, reviewing everything I'd scanned so far. She added her own stack of files, recorded conversations, text logs, even a voicemail Jason had accidentally left on her office line where he complained about how long the old man's holding on. After she left, Everett looked more alive than I'd seen him in 2 days. "I always thought I'd die tired," he said, "but not anymore. I think I'll die satisfied." At bedtime, I lingered at the hallway window, looking out at the quiet lake. A thin layer of ice glistened under moonlight. The world looked peaceful. But inside this house, we were loading the kind of ammo that no one ever sees coming until it's too late. Jason had always said I was too sensitive. Maybe he was right. But now I was sensitive and in control. By Friday morning, the house didn't look like a quiet holiday home anymore. It looked like a hospice center. Or, more accurately, it looked like a trap. We staged it down to the fine details: oxygen tank beside Everett's bed, fourth stand set up in the corner, heart monitor equipment, non-functional but convincing, bottles of medication lined up neatly, some real, some filled with vitamins, a few just for show. James, a friend of Gloria's and former production tech for medical training videos, had dropped off everything we needed. He didn't ask too many questions, just looked at Everett and said, "You want this to look real, huh?" Everett nodded once and James went to work. The transformation took under 2 hours. We moved Everett into a downstairs room that had better lighting. I adjusted the blinds for maximum shadow across his face, deepening the already visible signs of illness. He pulled off his glasses, let his hair fall untamed, and put on a gray thermal shirt that made his skin look washed out. "This feels ridiculous," he muttered. "Maybe," I said, snapping photos. "But it'll feel a hell of a lot more ridiculous when they're crying over an inheritance they lost because of these pictures." He chuckled, then coughed. A real one. It lingered, reminded us both of the clock quietly ticking behind all this. I sent the photos to Melissa, Jason's younger cousin, the one person in that whole family who hadn't completely turned. She'd texted once, "How's Uncle Everett? Hope you're okay?" And that was all the opening I needed. I replied with carefully chosen words. "He's been declining faster than expected. Fever hit 101 last night. Oxygen helping a little. I'm doing what I can. Will keep you posted." Along with the text, I sent 2 photos, one of Everett, eyes closed, hooked up to the monitor. The other, a selfie of me in the chair beside him, makeup off, hair tied back, wearing an oversized hoodie. I looked tired, which wasn't hard. I was tired. Melissa replied instantly, "Oh my God, he looks bad. I'll call Jason and Carol, they should come back." I didn't tell her not to. That was the point. While we waited, Everett and I worked on the timeline. Each day from the moment they left, we logged fake symptoms, fever spikes, pain levels, blood pressure swings. I made charts that looked like they belonged in a real nurse's binder. I even printed labels for pill bottles to match the entries. Everett's real decline hadn't fully set in yet, but we both knew it wasn't far off. In the meantime, we leaned into the performance. I left voicemails for Jason every few hours, each one a little more strained, a little more urgent. "Hey, it's me. Everett's breathing is getting worse. I'm managing, but it's hard. Please call me. He's asking for you, says your name sometimes when he sleeps. Maybe just call, even for a second." I made sure Everett heard each one. He sat on the edge of the bed after one recording, quietly impressed. "Damn, Sarah, you could have gone into theater." I smirked. Graphic design doesn't usually require Oscar-level grief, but I guess I'm multi-talented. That afternoon, the neighbors started coming around. First was Mrs. Templeton from across the road. She brought a casserole and stayed for tea. She didn't ask questions, just looked at Everett with watery eyes and squeezed my hand as she left. Then came the Kowalskis, retired couple, both former teachers, who'd always wondered why Jason stopped visiting once the money started drying up. And then Harold, sweet, quiet Harold from next door, who told me he once saw Everett fall while getting the mail and Jason never came out, even after Harold knocked 3 times. Every story was more damning than the last. I logged them all. Full names, dates, what they witnessed, what they said. This wasn't just emotional manipulation. This was witness testimony. Everett watched me work, head leaning back against his pillow. "They're going to walk into this house thinking they're still the heroes. And they'll walk out realizing they're the villains," I said, publicly, legally, permanently. We wrapped up the night reviewing documents. Gloria had filed the new trust. The house, the accounts, the assets. They were no longer in Jason or Carol's reach. By Monday, when they came home expecting a warm hug and maybe a dying man's final blessing, they'd find a legal fortress waiting for them. And me. I wasn't the same woman they'd left behind. I went to bed with Everett's last words of the night echoing in my ears. "When they get back, don't give them grief. Give them silence. That'll scare them more." I smiled in the dark, blanket pulled up to my chest, the cold forgotten. I didn't need to yell. The trap was already set. By Saturday morning, word had spread. I wasn't sure who said what to whom, but the parade of casseroles, sympathy cards, and knock-knock just-checking-in visits made it clear. The neighborhood knew something was wrong. The truth was, they'd known for a long time. They just hadn't had someone to tell it to. Mrs. Templeton returned around 9 a.m., holding a tin of banana bread like a peace offering. She sat at the table across from me while Everett napped in the next room. She leaned in, her voice low. Carol used to yell at him when she thought no one could hear, said he was dragging everyone down. Once I heard her say he was lucky anyone still put up with him. My chest tightened. "Did you ever tell anyone?" She shook her head slowly. I thought, maybe it wasn't my place, but I should have. That man shoveled my walkway in January with a cracked rib. I logged every word in my notebook. Later, Harold came by with a paper bag full of mail Everett had apparently never received. Bank statements, insurance letters, a heating bill unpaid. "They changed the mailing address a while back," he said. I thought it was odd. Looks like it all got returned to sender. 5 more neighbors showed up throughout the day. Each had a story. Some had several. The Kowalskis told me about seeing Everett walking to the pharmacy, 2 miles in the snow, because no one picked up his prescriptions. "I offered to drive him," Mr. Kowalski said, but he insisted. Said his stepson was just busy. I didn't realize he meant abandoned. I could hardly keep my hands steady as I documented it all. The timeline was undeniable. The voices were stacking. The illusion Jason and Carol had carefully built, that they were attentive, generous, exhausted from years of caregiving, was unraveling. And they didn't even know it yet. Everett woke mid-afternoon and listened patiently as I read through what I'd gathered. He didn't cry, didn't rage, he just nodded slowly after each entry. "I always knew they were careless," he said, "but I didn't know it showed." "It did," I said. "They just hoped no one would look closely." He glanced at the wall clock. "They'll be home tomorrow." "Ready?" "Almost," he said, "but I want to record the video tonight." We converted the living room into a makeshift set. The lighting was soft, the background clean. Everett insisted on wearing a sweater Martha had bought him years ago, navy blue with thin white stripes down the sleeves. "I want to look like myself," he said, "not a victim." He sat in the rocker by the fireplace, the same place I'd found him when I arrived. Camera rolling, he began. "To Jason, to Carol, and to anyone else who thought I wouldn't notice what you've done, this is my truth." He didn't read from a script. He spoke from memory, from pain, from rage polished into precision. He described the lies, the siphoned funds, the emotional manipulation, the way they'd made him feel invisible in his own home. He mentioned the cold winters, the missed medications, the withheld care. Then he turned his head slightly toward the camera, locking eyes with whoever would one day watch. "You thought I'd die quietly. Instead, I'm leaving loudly." When the recording ended, the room felt heavier. Not sad, righteous. I backed up the video to 3 places, a flash drive, the cloud, and a private link emailed to Gloria. Then I helped Everett to bed. He was tired, but not weak. Not yet. "I don't need them to be punished," he murmured, settling into the pillow. "I just need them to see what they lost." I sat beside him for a while, watching the rise and fall of his chest, listening to the wind outside. They were coming back tomorrow, and everything was about to change. By Sunday, something had shifted. Everett didn't get out of bed, not because of the plan, not to make it look convincing. This time, it was real. His skin had gone pale, his breathing was thinner. He looked older than he had even just yesterday. The sharpness in his eyes dulled. Not gone, just fading. I brought him tea and tried to joke. He smiled but didn't sip. He stared at the cup like it belonged to someone else. "I feel it," he said quietly, "like a switch flipped in the night." I sat beside him. "You don't have to do anything else. You've done enough." But Everett shook his head. "Not yet. We finish it today." Gloria came at noon with a notary named Simon. She carried a briefcase with freshly printed documents and a solemn face that told me she already knew what Everett looked like when time was almost up. Everett forced himself to sit upright. His hands trembled, but he signed every page with purpose. His will, his revised trust, final medical power of attorney. He appointed me as full executor of his estate and explicitly cited Jason and Carol's abandonment as the reason for their disinheritance. No ambiguity, no loopholes, nothing left to interpretation. When Simon notarized the last signature, Everett looked up and said, "You don't know what it's like to finally feel safe again." Gloria's voice was quiet. "You earned it." We took a break after that. I made soup, what little I could with the supplies we had, and helped Everett eat a few spoonfuls. After, he asked to sit in the living room again, just for a little while. I wrapped him in a thick blanket and helped him into his favorite chair near the window. The lake outside had frozen slightly at the edges, glistening like glass. He stared out there a long time, not speaking. Finally, he said, "My wife loved this view. Martha. She used to say the water made her feel small, in a good way. I never told her it scared me." "Why?" "Because when you grow up with people like Jason and Carol, stillness isn't peace. It's a warning." Later that evening, Everett asked me to record one last message, a personal letter to the family, read aloud on camera. But this time, it wasn't just a legal statement. It was something else. It was his truth. Calm, devastating, completely composed. To those who thought I was nothing more than a burden, you were wrong. I wasn't a burden. I was the only thing standing between you and who you really are. Now the world will see what you chose to be and what you lost because of it. He didn't accuse. He didn't scream. That would have given them too much power. He simply described what had happened, with a clarity that left no room for denial. Even the notary swallowed hard when he stepped out of the room. That night, Everett asked for one last thing: port wine. "Martha and I were saving a bottle for our 50th anniversary," he said. "She didn't make it, neither will I, but I'd still like a sip." I found the bottle where he said it would be, tucked behind old hardcovers in the study. I poured us each a glass. We drank in silence. "To clarity," he said. "To justice," I replied. He fell asleep by the window, the port glass still resting in his hand. I didn't move him. I just sat beside him, wrapped in a blanket, listening to the quiet hum of a house that had finally told its truth. Tomorrow they'd return, and they'd find everything waiting for them. I knew before I touched him. It was just after 3 a.m. The room was still. No wind outside, no creaks from the old house. I had dozed in the armchair beside Everett's window when I woke to that kind of silence that fills your ears and makes your skin go cold. His breathing had stopped. No struggle, no gasping. He looked peaceful, hand resting on the blanket, chin slightly tilted toward the window. He still held the edge of the glass from our toast. His expression wasn't sad. It was complete. I sat there for nearly an hour. No tears, just silence, watching the man who'd gone from my husband's grumpy stepfather to the only person who'd seen me, really seen me, in months. His last words had been simple: "Tell the truth. Let them deal with it." At dawn, I called the hospice nurse Everett had seen weekly. Diane arrived just after 6, still in her scrubs, no makeup, eyes warm with recognition. "He said this might happen suddenly," she murmured after checking his pulse. "He always wanted to go on his own terms. I'd say he did." She signed the paperwork. Official time of death, 3:14 a.m. Before she left, she looked at me and said, "You did right by him, Sarah." Not many people can say that at the end. I nodded, barely holding it together. "Thank you." The funeral home came next. 2 men, quiet, respectful, handled Everett with dignity. One of them recognized him from a local charity gala years ago. "He gave our food bank its first big donation," he said. "Didn't want his name on anything, just said, 'Do something good with it.'" When they wheeled him out, I didn't cry. Not then. There would be time for that later. Now, I had work to do. By 9 a.m., I had transformed the house again. No more staged decline, no more oxygen tanks. I cleaned everything, folded the bedding, packed away the fake medical equipment. What I left out was intentional. Everett's video testimony, queued up on the living room TV. His notarized letter on the coffee table addressed, "To my family." A series of color-coded folders on the dining table: financial records, bank withdrawals, medical neglect, neighbor statements, screenshots, photographs. Next to the folders, I placed a single photo: Jason and Carol on their Aspen trip, smiling in a hot tub while their supposed dying father sat alone on Thanksgiving. I printed out timestamps and overlaid them with Everett's documented decline. Every lie was about to stare them in the face. I packed my things quietly, folding clothes I hadn't really worn, tucked my notebook into my bag, breathed slowly. On the nightstand, I left Everett's wedding ring, Martha's initials carved on the inside, placed gently atop a folded linen napkin. Just a small, silent farewell. The last thing I did was walk back into the living room, take one deep breath, and stand in the same spot Jason would see me when he walked in. I looked at the empty rocking chair and said, "We did it." Then I stepped into the next room to wait. Tomorrow, they'd return from Aspen, tan and smug. Tomorrow, they'd find not a dying man, but a full accounting of everything they'd ever done. The first sound I heard was laughter. Car doors slammed, shopping bags rustled, and someone, Jason I'd bet, shouted, "This weather's brutal. Remind me why we live here?" The front door opened fast, as if they owned the place. Jason entered first, sunburned and smiling, still wearing his overpriced ski jacket. Marissa trailed behind, fake lashes and duty-free perfume, clutching a silver handbag. Carol followed, looking irritated that no one was waiting to greet her. "Honey?" Jason called out, not yet seeing me. We're back! I stepped forward into the living room. Jason froze mid-stride. What the hell? Carol stopped behind him. Her eyes narrowed. Why are you here? Where's Everett? Marissa asked. Is he still sleeping? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't flinch. I simply said, Everett passed away early this morning. The bags hit the floor. Jason's mouth opened, then closed again. Carol went pale. You let him die alone? I didn't let him do anything, I said, holding her stare. He died peacefully, in his favorite chair, after signing his final will and recording a statement, and after being left behind by every person who was supposed to love him. Carol's face twisted. You had a funeral? Yesterday, I said. Neighbors came. Friends. People who actually cared. Jason's gaze snapped to the coffee table. He noticed the letter, cream envelope, Everett's handwriting. To my family. He stepped forward, but I moved first. You should sit, I said. There's a lot to cover. They gathered in the living room like strangers forced to share a waiting room. No one sat in Everett's chair. That silence said everything. I opened the letter and began reading aloud. Everett's voice, captured in ink. If you're reading this, I'm gone. Not that my absence will change much considering how little my presence mattered to most of you in the end. He wrote about the canceled appointments, the forgotten birthdays, the neglected medication, the frozen rooms, and the financial lies. Not as accusations, as facts, as if documenting weather. The greatest pain isn't dying, it's realizing the people you raised only cared about what you'd leave behind, not what you still had left to say. When I finished, the silence was thick and ugly. No one moved. Marissa shifted uncomfortably. Melissa, Jason's cousin, stood up from the hallway where she'd quietly appeared. I warned you, she said to Jason. I told you he looked bad. I told you to call. You didn't say it was serious, Jason snapped, losing his cool. She staged this whole thing. I didn't react. Instead, I picked up the remote and hit play. Everett's face filled the TV screen. Calm. Composed. This is my testimony. I am of sound mind and body. I know what I'm saying. I know who I am. He laid out the timeline. The neglect. The financial abuse. The manipulation. He named names. Quoted dollar amounts. Referenced dates. Carol stood up. Turn this off. No, I said. You don't get to walk out of this part. When the video ended, Carol paced behind the couch like a cornered animal. Jason looked queasy. Melissa stared at the floor. Where's his lawyer? Jason asked finally, voice strained. We need to talk to her. This can't be real. I'm here, Gloria said, stepping through the front door. Jason turned, eyes wide. What is this, some kind of ambush? Gloria walked past him like he didn't exist. Mr. Harmon's final will was signed, witnessed, notarized, and medically certified as valid. He revoked all previous documents. He left everything to Sarah. Everything. Carol barked a laugh. That's ridiculous. Jason's his son. No, Gloria said sharply. Jason was his stepson, and he abandoned a dying man without food, medical care, or heat, and we have 6 neighbor statements confirming it. Jason turned red. This is insane. I want to see the accounts. You don't have access, I said. Everything's locked in a trust. I'm the trustee. What about the house? Carol demanded. Gloria smiled. Owned by a holding company Everett controlled, which now belongs to Sarah. You have no legal claim. Carol lunged for the file folders, but Gloria stepped in. Touch those and you'll have more than a failed inheritance to deal with. Jason finally broke. We'll contest it. You manipulated him. You were nothing until 5 days ago. I stepped closer, handed him a flash drive, and said, Everything is on here. Legal, time-stamped, witnessed, and backed up. You taught me something in our marriage, Jason. Always keep receipts. No one moved. No one argued. The lie they'd all been living cracked wide open, and they had to sit there, staring into it. And I didn't have to say another word.